News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And top of the morning to you, this is Newsline. We're live, as always, from the News First studios in Dawson Street in Clambo. And this morning we have got a presidential candidate with us. That's right, he's right here in the studio, and he is Dr. Rohan Pallewatta from the National Development Front. Here he is. Very good morning to you, Dr. Pallewatta.
Very good morning to you.
And welcome to News First Newsline.
Sure.
Doctor, you are a, shall we say, somewhat successful businessman. You employ people.
Sure.
You export out of Sri Lanka.
Yes.
And by all accounts, quite successful. So, why politics?
Well, as you rightly said, I can retire tomorrow as a successful entrepreneur.
Right.
But then there comes a time that you question the purpose of life. And then when things are not, because now whatever we do, even the business that I'm doing, I believe it is in the micro environment. And the macro environment is handled by a bunch of politicians.
Right.
And what is happening in the macro environment affects the businesses that we do in the micro environment. So the answer is to challenge the macro and take the reins into your hands. And also it's a matter of consciousness. Because when all the indicators indicate that the country is being mismanaged at the highest level, we cannot expect it to, change by an accident. Unless people like myself intervene effectively, it will go unabated. So this is the reason for me to have crossed over to the morass of politics.
On Newsline, we encourage your questions by SMS, please. 0772 300 305. Card coming up on your screen right now. And of course, we are in conversation with presidential candidate Dr. Rohan Pallewatta. That's rather noble. What's the profit? Is there a profit?
Well, the profit is, of course, the redeem in the country. Because now even myself, against all odds, I have managed to, I have had the will and the courage to penetrate through all the obstacles and establish my business. But if I had any successful country has a band of entrepreneurs. But in Sri Lanka, unfortunately, most of the entrepreneurs who are trying to establish their businesses, the environment is not conducive to them. So therefore, whether coming into politics, whether it's a profit, of course it's an investment. Because you're trying to create a conducive environment for other entrepreneurs to come up and play a role. We are trying to create a level playing field for everyone to come up and start their own businesses. Because some people who strive really hard to get their vehicle, get their housing, which even these fundamental, things they cannot. The people who go to Melbourne or some other city within 1 year, they resolve all these problems.
Right. Right. Well, Dr. Pallewatta, I want to ask you this: is, in your observation, is politics a rich man's game, or is it a rich man's responsibility?
I would rather say it's a rich man's responsibility.
But you need to be rich.
Well, in the present context, if you are speaking the hard truth, yes, you have to. Because the amount of money that you are compelled to spend, for example, now I will not name the paper. We had our launch on the 25th of September, and then I wanted a supplementary cover page as an advertisement, and they quoted me 1.2 million rupees.
Right.
And then once the dates for elections were fixed, they said now it is election rates, and the same advertisement would cost me 4.3 million. And then after 2 days prior to my advertisement, they call me and tell me now it is 14.3 million. So Somebody
didn't want you.
Sorry? Of course
somebody didn't want to give you the.
No, I do not think that they were trying to bar me. I mean, that's a rate in the market. So
you've been gazumped.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I did not go ahead with advertisements,
right?
Because the person who earns legitimately will think 100 times before he spends. It's not that I can manipulate the stock market or whatever. And I'm not making money through deals. I'm making money through manufacturing. So when you have that kind of money, you tend to think 100 times than a person who's having money from the corrupt
I heard the opposite from another candidate. That candidate said he didn't really have much money.
Yes.
So is it true that candidate Pallewatta and candidate Senanaika and candidate whoever else will be joining hands?
Well, that is what I have been striving hard, because rather than splitting the vote base that has come up for the alternative forces or alternative ideology, I think if we can come together, that is the best thing. But then on the other hand, there are other difficulties, such as now I have been, because in Sri Lanka, once the elections are declared, always we had 15 to 20 candidates coming forward,
right,
and handing over nominations. But for the first time in the history, 35 people have submitted their nominations this time. But if any person 3 years prior to the presidential election had come out and pronounced loud and clear that I'm going to contest the presidency and I'm going to challenge the system, I have to very humbly say that it was myself. So,
and therefore,
yes.
And therefore, was the not getting together?
Yes.
Was it a question of who the leader would be?
Well, that is part of the problem. But then I have very clearly stated, although I started 3 years ago, in order to meet the aspirations of the people, it's finally the aspirations of the people that should reign. I have said I am ready, I am amenable, I can even take a step back in order to bring this people together.
It is often said that the politicians shouldn't be businessmen, because businessmen know what they're doing, and politicians apparently don't.
Yeah,
you are a businessman aspiring to be in politics. How does that fit in?
Well, I think all the wealth of experience that you bring in from, because doing an international business is not an easy thing. Because now I started by exporting only to Japan, my product only to Japan.
Yeah.
But now, right now, I am supplying 17 different countries,
right,
including China and India. So whenever you penetrate a country with your product, you are conquering that country in terms of your pricing, in terms of your quality, in terms of your delivery. Unless, because if they have that internally, why would they buy from me? So the moment that you enter a country with your product, which means you are conquering that country.
Right.
So therefore, their experience will augur well in running a country, in managing a country.
Okay.
So there are so many parallels in running an international business. Sometimes managing a country like Sri Lanka might be much easier than managing an international business.
Send us your questions on by SMS 0772 300 305. We are in conversation with presidential candidate Dr. Rohan Pallewatta. Doctor, I want to ask you this question. Is it a question of ego, or is your conscience stirred enough that you want a change in Sri Lanka? Are you not taken aback by fighting the establishment? We have on the one main side we have candidate Gotabaya Rajapaksa, and on the other main side we have candidate Sajit Premadasa, who has a name that's it's a big brand name.
Sure.
Are you not frightened?
Not at all, because first I have to say that this is not an egocentric journey.
Right.
Now, before, there was a background as to why, before entering into and raising my hand and saying that I would contest for presidency, there's a background to it. It did not come out of shallow, and this document, the manifesto,
right,
and this is the blueprint of the country.
That's the blueprint.
Yeah, and this was developed not by myself, by Professor Deheregoda, Professor Krishan Deheregoda, and a think tank, right? And when I got this document, I scanned it in my mind, because in my life I have always delivered what I promised. So therefore, I wanted to see whether what is written here can be delivered. Can I make it a reality?
Okay.
So it is only when I was confident 100% that this can be done, that this could be delivered, that I raised my hand and said, okay, I'm going to contest for presidency.
So what are the main issues that you have identified and that you want to change?
Well, we have addressed all the areas like education, health, transportation, all these areas we have addressed.
And where education, or as I think as in India they call it, human resources development.
Sure.
What is wrong? What needs to be done?
Well, before coming into answering that question, I would say as to how I recognize the role of the executive of this country.
Right.
Because the executive of this country is elected by the direct mandate of the people, and the legislature is once again elected by another direct mandate of the people. So the role of the executive will not be policy formulation. It will be the role of the legislature to formulate the policies, and the supervisory role will be, of course, lying with the executive. So as to what is the criteria that I would adopt in supervising these policies? One thing, if the air that we breathe, the air quality drops, or else the water gets contaminated, right? Or there is pesticides or anything getting into our food, and if we are losing the green coverage of the country, and if it is a threat to the sovereignty of the country, then I do not think these policies should be approved or executed at all.
Right.
So that is the basis in which I will be looking at the policies that is coming from the legislature as the president of the country.
You once said that if you were to be elected president, you would resolve the debt crisis.
Yes, that's right.
How will you manage to do that when the established politicians and the established administrators have clearly failed to do that?
Well, when I said this 3 years ago, I was actually talking about restructuring the debt. And at the time when I said this, made this statement, our external debt was $46.2 billion US dollars.
Okay.
Out of that, the Chinese component was around $10 billion US dollars, for which we were paying a very high interest rate.
Right.
So what I was trying to point out is that there are sources where you can get, funds at a lesser interest rate.
Yeah.
So I was suggesting a loan swap, and people might say there are loan agreements and you can't defy them. But then, if you see, Mahathir Mohamad, when he was elected Prime Minister recently, in his 90s, he traveled to China, and he said, he named a few projects that is happening in Malaysia, and he said, we cannot pay these projects. So he was standing with the national interest. So I think a leader with a personality, of course there can be agreements, debt agreements, but then you can always request the counterpart, your countries who have entered into these agreements, to revise, right? Of course you have to have the political will, and you have to have the national interest in your heart.
I want to ask you this question. I hope you don't construe it as being personal. It's not. We ask difficult questions on Newsline, and that's why this program is here, because we want answers for and on behalf of the people, pro the people. On that note, can you tell me, are you a billionaire in rupee terms?
If you take my assets, yes, I'm a billionaire.
Okay.
In rupee terms, and of course I have to say I have declared my, handed over my assets declaration.
Which you have to as part of the...
Exactly, I have already complied with that.
Yes, okay. Now then, the point I'm asking you is this. I've been told that the fastest way to become a millionaire is to start off as a billionaire and enter politics. Is that about true? Or is it the other way around in Sri Lanka?
But in Sri Lanka, it's the other way around that is being happening.
Right.
But for a person like myself who have, made my mark as an entrepreneur, and if you are getting into principled politics, what you said is true. A billionaire can in no time become. But
in Sri Lanka, it is always it has been the other way. People end up
billionaires.
From bicycles to a Maybach.
Yes, that's right. So that is exactly the system that we are challenging.
Okay.
That is exactly one of the reasons that for me to have entered politics.
But I want to say this: that as a group,
yes,
the Maharaja Group I dare say, can make more money, and we've been with all the governments that have been here, and despite all that, the group has been rebuilt not once but twice. It was built once, and since 1983, the group has been rebuilt. Right, so most people build a business once. Our chairman built it twice.
Sure.
So what I'm trying to say is that, but on our own, we've challenged the system. We've exposed corruption. We've exposed nepotism, conflicts of interest, and all sorts of jolly things that sends the advertisers south.
Sure.
Okay? And on top of all that, we are backed by clergy from across the ecclesiastical divide and by the common man. And yet we are going on because we have a commitment to uncovering the truth, to creating a level playing field, an equitable land for all. Is this what you are attempting to emulate? Is your conscience with that of the people?
Exactly. And I really appreciate what your organization is doing, because now most of the media, they are not playing it fair.
You think so?
Definitely.
Well,
it is evident, because I'm thankful to the airtime that your organization has given, as a presidential candidate from the inception. So this is not happening with many of the media, today. So it's very unfortunate.
Now, what is the biggest? What's number one? Let's say there are many questions. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Please keep sending them in. 0772 300 305 by SMS, please. Not on WhatsApp, because you can't keep changing. And we are in conversation with Dr. Rohan Pallewatta from the National
Development Front.
National Development Front, NDF. Now then, Doctor, what is the most pressing issue that you have identified?
Well, right now I think we are in an economic deadlock, because now the biggest debt repayment installment will come next year. And I brought this to the notice of the authorities 3 years.
Yeah.
Leadership is not about recognizing the danger that is tomorrow, but recognizing it much in advance.
Right.
So now, for me, if you say, okay, how are you going to manage the economy? How are you going to come out of it?
Yeah.
I believe the quick fix would be to have as foreign direct investment at least $10 billion within a span of 12 months. That is not just to bring it and put it in the stock market and take it the next day, but as foreign direct investment. So what have I done about it?
You look very sincere.
Yes.
So I'm really interested in knowing what you intend doing about this.
Yes. Now I have, during the past 3 years, I have traveled the world. I have been, meeting people like Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
For on behalf of your company or for on behalf of the people of Sri Lanka?
On behalf of the people of Sri Lanka.
Okay, carry on.
And then, of course, I met the King of Ras Al Khaimah, then some politicians from Japan, then, as I said, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, and then Mr. Jeremy Hunt, who was the Foreign Secretary, several times, not once. So they have introduced many people to start their operations in Sri Lanka. But the investor signals that we are sending out is not right at the moment. It is not conducive.
What are these signals?
Because, the moment they come, they will put to a line ministry.
Yeah.
And at the very outset, they will want to know the commissions that they get. Because for investment there is a competition in the world. There is no compelling reason as to why a person should come and invest in Sri Lanka. So through my contacts, I have managed, to get pledges for around 4 billion at the moment, right? Around 4 billion at the moment. So then that is 4 billion, of course, $4 billion.
Right.
And then this is myself not even being in a Pradesh Sabha. So as a presidential candidate, I can proudly say that I have done my homework. So that is one of the priorities, because if you are the head of the state, there are, if as in my private capacity, if I can get pledges for about 4 billion, I cannot see the amount that you can bring in if you are head of the state.
Okay. I'm going to take some of the questions now. I'll just take one. I just wanted to get the spirit of the thing going.
Sure.
The message says that he's a 23-year-old from down south. He wants to know what you're going to do. One of the questions is you already answered, which is why you're not joining the others.
Sure.
And splitting the vote and so on. The other is that he wants to know what you're going to do about all these people who have been charged or who have been involved or investigated with corruption. And he says it's 4.5 years.
Yes.
And all we've heard is talk and a few people in remand and out.
Sure.
What do you intend doing about that?
Well, I think there shouldn't be any political interference in the course of justice. Rule of law should prevail. It is not just words. Everyone will say rule of law.
Yeah.
But it should, in fact, happen in this land. And you should not interfere. Politicians should not interfere in the rule of law.
Do you agree that? Do you agree with the ability of the executive president to grant clemency in some cases after a conviction?
Well, so far as to how that has been used, it is a matter of as to how you use that authority.
Well, we had some politician whose wife was convicted of murder only to be given a presidential pardon.
Exactly. So that cannot be accepted, right? So therefore, if there is an authority that it can be imminent, that it can be abused, I do not think that we should give any authority of that nature to any person.
But are you confident of the independence of the entire process, the judiciary?
Yes.
And including, for example, the police?
Yes.
Are you so confident that you believe that all judgments reached are safe, and therefore you can lock them up for ever and a day, or even the death penalty? But that's a separate question. Sure. What about the first?
Well, I think it's because the system itself is so corrupt at the moment. It will be a gradual transformation. It is not going to take place overnight. You can't say from tomorrow onwards everything is going to be fine. So it will be a gradual transformation, and the example should come from the top, from the executive himself. And once he sets the example, it will cascade down to the bottom. Because one of the researchers in one of my team members say, if the corruption involved in government procurement by 50%, the economic growth of the country will go up by 2%. So that is the amount of corruption that is taking place at the moment. So therefore, it has got into the system. It's like a cancer. So we have to take that cancer off without the death of the patient.
Right. Somebody is saying here, a proper businessman will start to rebuild the country by negotiating the outstanding loan to be paid on easier terms. This way, play for time and drive exports and tourism hard to make a difference, leave alone all unnecessary expenditures to be stopped. Does that sound like a good plan? Very
good plan, because now the former Auditor General, Mr. Gamini Vijay Singh, he says he simplifies the problem that Sri Lanka is facing. He's saying that the government expenditure for a single day is 7 billion rupees.
Right.
And the income is 5 billion.
Right.
So now in my business, as to how, if you ask how do I make profits, even the entire world is watching, because this is the first time that in this part of the world that we are manufacturing this kind of high quality product. So in order for me to make profits, I have to breathe and live, lean concept. I have to eliminate all the waste that is there, all the unnecessary processes. It is only then that I can make profits. So if you can bring that lean practice into the management, into governance of this country, as Mr. Gavini Vijayasinghe says, if the expenditure is 7 billion and income is 5 billion, I mean within a month we can maybe person with a lean management, who lives lean, can fix that immediately.
Another question here, very, very valid question here. It says that there are still mafias in the public sector, including the judiciary. How do they want to know how you're going to arrest all these?
Well, as I said, it has to happen gradually.
Right.
Now, for example, you take one example, the salary scales of the people in the judiciary.
Yeah.
Say, I'm not naming any judges, I'm not naming any person. Supposing to get into the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeal level, you need to be a career practitioner. I mean, you have spent at least 35 years of your career.
Yeah.
So once you get there, you have children of who are doing their higher education, or you might have health issues, and the salary that you receive is insufficient to meet those ends.
I honestly don't know how much a judge of the Supreme Court gets.
I think it's about. I'm not talking about the allowances, but I think it's about 150,000, right?
Do you? There was a question somebody asked me yesterday. Said, do you agree that if the salary of starting right from the local area, the big man, the big chief is the Grama Sevaka there, that if the Grama Sevaka's salary was something like 75,000 a month, then everybody there will be clamoring to get there, and so that you will actually have hopefully the best Grama Sevaka for that area. And if that is replicated, that is the start. So do you agree that politicians, our legislators, our public service officials, our key personnel, like the head of the army, navy, the forces, the police, should be paid top of the line salaries?
Definitely. I mean, definitely I endorse that and I agree with that.
And do you think that they can then take away all the benefits? Why don't you? Isn't that what happens in places like Singapore and so on?
Exactly. That is how they developed Singapore, because at the time, I think that was they were paying the legislators the highest salary in the world.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, they were tightening up screws on corruption. I mean, you live with your salary, you are getting a handsome salary, you learn to live with that, and any corruption is not condoned. I mean, they're punished severely.
Would you agree with the viewer who says that government ministers should be banned from travel until the country gets back to normalcy?
Well, certain ministers, of course, will have to have foreign travel, because we cannot develop our country in isolation. Right. We will definitely need foreign assistance, and we will need foreign dialogue, we will need diplomacy. For those purposes, of course, a few ministers will have to travel.
When they travel, do you agree that they need to take a big entourage with them?
It depends on the purpose of travel. Supposing now, if you are going to have a meeting with some entrepreneurs in that particular country, would be investors, and if you can take some people who can be their investment partners in Sri Lanka, taking them is fine, because as long as because you have to do a cost benefit analysis before you take them.
Right.
So that is what is not happening, because you just take some entourage, and sometimes you don't know the kind of value that they bring back to the country. So that is where this lean concept comes in, where you check everything before you practice.
Dr. Pallewatta, how are you going to rebuild people's confidence in the judiciary?
Well, I do not see that it has deteriorated to the extent that some people are trying to say. Because if you analyze the judgments that has been, even regarding the, some judgments regarding politicians, I mean, it's apparent that justice has been delivered.
And Dr. Pallewatta, this is part of all the questions coming in. There's a call by the majority to abolish the presidential system. What's your take on it?
Well, I have a completely different view. I'm sorry, because now, when as I said, when I received this document, when I was thinking whether it is doable, of course you need some authority to do it. So I was thinking of the executive powers of a president to implement this. So for a person, because every person has his own management style, for myself to implement this program, to take this national blueprint forward, I would definitely need executive powers. So personally, I am for executive presidency.
Somebody here says two critical questions. What are your plans for, one, the Middle Eastern Sri Lankan maid situation? They're talking about the export of domestic labor. And two, the future of the tea plantation sector.
Sure. Now, politicians shamelessly say that the highest income earner of Sri Lanka for the past so many years is the remittances that we get from our sisters and mothers who are there in the Middle East. And once again, the tea pluckers, most of them are female. The 52% of the population are from the fairer sex in this country. And then even the garment factories, most of them are females. So we have to salute the contribution that they are.
But while saluting, what are we doing?
Exactly. Now what I'm trying to say is, look at the social cost on the other hand. While shamelessly politicians are saying, we are generating this much of income, look at the social cost, because when the children are abandoned at a time when they need the love and warmth of a mother, you cannot teach these children what is compassion, what is kindness, because they have never experienced it in their life. So there are hundreds, thousands of people, children, that have been brought up without the warmth and love of a mother. So we have to, bring an end to this system. Of course, you have to face it out by, replacing it, right? Providing employment, adequate employment, bringing in more manufacturing, facilities to the country, so that people will have a, decent life. And of course, we have to go into agri-based industries, right? We have 70% of the people are, if you go to rural areas, they are engaged in some kind of agricultural activity. So, but they are not thinking of agri-based industries. Of course, the state will have to take the lead. So, my answer to that question, mothers going to Middle East, right? We have to face it out, and we have to bring it to an end, because the social cost is much more.
So instead, what would you do? Export professional labor?
Yeah, because now if you send a white person for a white collar job, right, and that is much more feasible, than what they collectively bring to the country.
Rohit from Gampa has got a splendid question. Do you have enough exposure in rural areas? I see your campaign has concentrated mostly on the internet.
I think any person who's crossing over to politics will have this challenge, getting your message across, because now as a new party, we don't have the same, we cannot match the mechanism of the main parties. But we have, done everything possible. Now we have more than 14,000 Gram Seva divisions. So far we have managed to identify our agents in all these 14,000 Gram Seva divisions. But I'm not saying that it is a well-oiled mechanism. There are some people who are really efficient and working, and they are taking the message across. So it's a daunting task. But then we are not rattled, or we are not, our determination is intact until we change, because this is a journey, right? So people are gathering, and it doesn't matter the number at the moment. Of course, that election numbers would matter, but then what we are propagating to cleanse this entire system and hand it over to a talented young bunch of people, right? So that is our idea, that is our march forward, that is what we are fighting for. Until we realize this, we will keep moving forward.
Says here, we'll ask you this question first. Is it fair to say that to have peace, when I mean peace, I mean an equitable lifestyle for everybody, irrespective of caste, creed, and so on. To be ready for that and to have that, shouldn't you be ready for war?
Well, because I do not agree on that, because
I think this is leading up to the next question.
Yeah.
What is your national security policy? Because if there's no peace,
Yes.
there can't be anything else, really.
Well, personally,
Yeah.
I believe Army, Navy, and the Air Force, the tri-forces of this country, are one of the best in the world.
Yeah.
And I have been, advising them, and I have been part of their training programs and in the strategic level
Yeah.
with all these institutes for the past 10 years.
Yeah.
And I have received, highest, awards from all these three institutes. So whether you like it or not, the executive of the country will be the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. So in that sense, I think I have a fair knowledge about national security than the previous presidents of this country. I have been working very closely with these establishments. Mm-hmm. So the one thing that we should look into is our maritime security. We should spend, and we should have more surveillance, because all infiltrations that is happening,
It was taken away from the Navy and handed over to a private company, and that chairman is being remanded in the system.
That is why, exactly. So we need state intervention, because we need surveillances, because we do not have adequate crafts to, because we have our exclusive economic zone is 8 times bigger than the country itself. So we need to protect this exclusive economic zone, and we have to use it to the maximum. And also, when it comes to national security, I mean, what is the threat? We have to understand, we have to have a threat assessment, right? So supposing we get all the modern equipment, we increase the army, but if one of these major powers like India or China decides to attack us, I mean, can we withstand that? So it's a matter of policy decision. Are we going to be like Israel, and be a power where you can even challenge the superpowers, or else having a mediocre army, having even on the 4th of February, we display all these armory that we have purchased under from some country. So I believe, why are we doing this? We have
probably much of the money borrowed.
Exactly. So why are we doing this? Is it because other countries are also displaying this on their national independence days? So therefore we have better things to display. For example, what will protect us is in one sense the Tripitaka. I'm saying something very controversial.
Yeah.
The Tripitaka, then our history written in Mahavansa. These are our protectors. It is not the arms that we have purchased by paying exorbitant amount of money. If it is manufactured in Sri Lanka, of course we can display. That's fine. We can show our might. But these are some borrowed equipment we are trying to display, and we are saying this is our independence.
We've got a great question here. Whatever happens at the presidential elections, Dr. Pallewatta must get into the cabinet. The question is how?
Well, many people have suggested, but the only thing is, as I said, even bringing in the investment that has been promised, I mean, they will look as to which government is in power. And if that government cannot create a conducive environment for investment, even if you get in there as a cabinet minister, it will be difficult to get this investment that has been pledged.
In Sri Lanka, is there a culture of political forgiveness? The reason I'm asking is it's linked to this last question that I've just taken up, which is that somebody's saying here that whatever happens at the presidential election, you need to get into the cabinet. And the question was how. For the question to be how, the last time somebody ventured into politics, please say it out, Sarat Fonseca, when he ventured into politics, for his attempts, he was well rewarded. He ended up in jumpers at Velikada. Now, that's what I mean about no culture of political forgiveness.
Yeah.
So, do you think that if incoming government will look at any candidate who's not been successful at the presidential, do you think that they might be mature enough and politically savvy enough and to have the vision to choose somebody like that to join a cabinet?
Well, after the elections, I doubt. But before the elections, if I say what is happening now in the ground, I have been invited by both main camps to join them. But then I came out opposing the political culture created by this.
I want to ask you that.
Yes.
Because you have your own funding.
Yes.
So was that because they wanted to attract your funding, or was that to stop you from splitting the vote even further, or was there a genuine need to have you on their team that you can make it, or worse still, is it because they are trying to make false promises? What is it?
Well, I think one thing is because numbers will count at the next election, definitely, because everyone is skeptical about getting 50% of the vote. So any number would matter. So I think that is the main reason that they are inviting, for me to join them. But I came out opposing these two main camps. So it's a matter of consciousness and it's a matter of integrity. So what happens in politics, because one of the main politicians, when he spoke to me, I said, I came opposing your party, right? How can I join you? It's a matter of consciousness, it's a matter of integrity. Then he said, come on, Rohan, this is all about politics. So which means the politics of Sri Lanka has come to a level where integrity does not matter anymore when it comes to politics. So that is exactly the culture that I am opposing.
So you are opposing the culture of hypocrisy.
Definitely.
Dr. Rohan Pallewatta, do you know, I'm so glad that you came on the program, of course, but I'm saddened that we are in our last minute. So we've had an interesting time. Tell me, do you honestly feel, or can you disclose whether the three main independents are going to join hands together? You with the former army commander Mahesena Naika, for example. Will you be joining?
Well, it's open to everyone, because I have already made a statement saying that to meet the aspirations of the people, I'm even ready to take a step back. But that is all what I could do. And then if that is not the case, of course, then I will have to go to the next option, and which means I will have to stand by the people who have gathered around me during the past 3 years, and I have to go ahead and contest elections.
Very sadly, it's the end of our time. But Dr. Rohan Pallewatta, I wish you all the very best in your endeavors. I do hope that you will be able to convince Sri Lanka that you are the answer. Thank you for being on Newsline. And that's the way it was on Newsline. And we do hope that you enjoyed the program. Thank you for your questions. Do send them in, because we can take them up with all the various candidates and all their representatives when they come on the show. And we'll save them, and we will do that. And the number is, of course, 0772 300 305. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day. And, of course, God bless.
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.